to criticize somebody for talking about it rather than doing something about it. That's exactly what the movie's saying. So you kind
Exactly.
of provided this satirical loop that if you're kind of like, oh, that movie that deals with school shooting, then you just walked right into the thing. It's like, well, should it not deal with should it not deal with that? Because if you're saying the movie shouldn't deal with that, what are you doing about it?
Mr. Verbinski, it's so good to watch your name once again on the big screen after 10 long years. I know you've been working, yeah, of course. I know
Yeah.
you've been working on a lot of things in the meantime, but good luck, have fun, don't die, ended up being a priority for you, even though every major studio refused to participate. So, what convinced you this was a project worth fighting for?
I just think the world is sort of screaming the answer, uh, Antonio. I think that people feel like something's off, something's not right. You know, whether it's the global, identity crisis, like what's happening to us. So I think it felt like the film needed to be immediate, it needed to be now. You know, I think so much is changing so fast. So there's real urgency to make it. And I think once you have something that when you have that sort of urgency, you're going to figure out a way to get it made. You know, even if it means you don't have the resources. That's why it was so nice to have such a great cast and to work with Michael again. Just because I think everybody who worked on the movie felt like this was a rare opportunity.
So now, Mr. Peña, you played an anxious high school teacher, unable to communicate with his teenage students because, well, they are completely hypnotized by phones. So, what did you love the most about this character, and to what extent do you share his frustration with people, getting obsessed with TikTok and social media?
Yeah, it feels I could relate to it a lot because I do like sometimes I do these things like and I talk about acting, with some students and and just try to, they ask me a question, and sometimes sometimes they seem bored and they're on their, their phone or whatnot,
Yeah.
and there's a difference between uh, you know, like being famous and then being good. You know what I mean? And this guy really, he goes into the classroom and he's really excited about this, because he loves this book and maybe he wants to be a writer. And that's why he wants to share like the joy that this book gives him. But then he's met with the exact opposite of literature, and that's just like flashing images meant for a dopamine spike, as opposed to like really loving something like a book, like a good book. And immediately that he's at war with the students, and then he kind of gets sucked into it a little bit, and then boom, it's off. It's
Yeah.
like like yeah, that's it. Then he gets into his own part of like a cat and mouse chase.
Yeah, you know the Mark and Janet story and all the fighting with these zombie-like teenagers reminded me of Edgar Wright's movie The World's End. I don't know if you make that
No, what is
connection
it?
too. The World's End of
The
director.
World's End.
It's part of
Oh yeah.
the Cornetto trilogy. I don't know if
Yeah.
you thought about it, Gore.
No, but I think that's interesting. But that's aliens, right? Isn't that the one with aliens at the end of the bar? Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
I love that was a lot of fun. Love that movie.
Yeah,
Um,
it's also like a big entity who wants to control everything, like brainwash
Ah,
and all.
yeah, yeah. I think that idea, um, that we sort of succumb to something, I think is something that people and the institutions aren't going to do anything about it. I think it's really going to come down to regular folks. That's why our movie, we're not going to the Navy SEAL Academy in San Diego to try to find, the heroes. We're going to Norm's Diner. It's going to take the sort of the misfits and the common folk to kind of rebel.
But talking about other aspect, Mr. Verbinski, while watching this movie, I was surprised by, well, a lot of things, but in particular, the amount of jokes related to school shootings. According to screenwriter Matthew Robinson, multiple studios said no to this project because of all the school shooting stuff. At some point, did you consider removing those gags by changing the plot or tone?
Well, there's no blood. We don't actually see we don't see a school shooting. I think
Yeah.
it's more important to convey how insane it is that we've normalized this, right?
Hmm.
This idea that we can put a band-aid on this and then, or that we can move forward. Um, uh, you know, I think humor is the harshest critic. I think when you say jokes, I think it's more. I think it's really interesting to watch that sequence with an audience because they as they should, they go from like, oh wow, this is serious, to then slowly realizing what's happening as Susan, Juno Temple's character, um, goes through it. I think a lot of that is critically, tonally, it's critical that Juno Temple plays it real and honest. She's
Yeah.
just absolutely honest. The world is inhumane, you know? But she's playing it as a human. So that's the sort of Kafka-esque. That's what makes it absurd, right? Is that her reactions are true. Like she's figuring out this is possible. What's happening? What's behind all this?
Absolutely.
What's sort of sad and ironic is how prescient the movie's become. Because just reading an article the other day about how some of these tragedies in schools are being inspired by conversations with AI. Right? So it's already happened. So I think humor has a great way of warning society about something.
Yeah, absolutely. It has this great sequence of her breathing as all the tragedy is happening. I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, playing it internally, I think it was an interesting choice. But also, I think if there's any criticism, you're stepping right into the spotlight that's divided, right? Which is like to criticize somebody for talking about it rather than doing something about it. That's exactly what the movie's saying. So you kind
Exactly.
of provided this satirical loop that if you're kind of like, oh, that movie that deals with school shooting, then you just walked right into the thing. It's like, well, should it not deal with should it not deal with that? Because if you're saying the movie shouldn't deal with that, what are you doing about it? You know, you're
Right.
not you're now you're criticizing the criticism rather than like
Yeah.
doing something about it. That's exactly what we're saying.
I
Exactly.
also, dude, it was so weird to me, like too, like you know, it would have changed the dynamics so much of this movie, and taking that part out as well. I think it would have, I don't know, it would have diluted it in a way, and like almost would have been kind of a
It
cop out.
was
And
never on
what,
the table. I mean,
yeah,
it came up over and over and over again with the studio. It was like, it's like, okay, well, if somebody says we're not making this movie because of that, our response, myself and the writer, were like, okay, then you're not making a movie. Like,
yeah, and what's interesting,
we'll move it somewhere. We'll go somewhere else. You know?
but if you look at the ecosystem of it all, and like holistically, if you want, like each one of those studios has a news outlet, right? And they're willing to play school shootings out all day, all for so that people are glued to the
Yeah,
screen.
are
But
numb
you,
to it.
but we're
Yeah.
but we're not going to make a movie out of it. You know what I mean? I think I mean
Yeah.
that's what this movie's about as well.